to work through. All right, welcome to our co-working time on Tuesday, February 6th. And just to get things started, we'll go around again. And what are you hoping to get accomplished in the next hour or so that we have together? And I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with me, and then we'll loop around Roland, April, Vera, and Ronnie. We'll just keep with that same circle. And partly I wanted to start because I wanted to put out head off at the pass some conversation around the charrette planning. In part because my concern is we don't have finalized invitations yet. Like we don't know exactly who's coming and how many are coming on site versus online. And it's looking actually like we're going to have a really small crew on site, but I think that, basically our core team is likely to be on site. And that may factor how we blend the online and on-site work. So while I recognize that there's some urgency in some planning, I'm also a little nervous about going too far until we have like a finalized list of who's coming. So then one of my things on the to-do list is getting out final invitations to people that we want to tap on the shoulder and specifically say, hey, are you signed up yet? And beyond that, then I'd love to start working through the RFPs and thinking through what April was talking about. What's the groundwork that we need to have done for the charrette to be as useful as possible. So that's what's on my agenda, mostly looking at RFPs and moving forward the guilds and the recruitment. And over to you, Roland. What's on your agenda?
I think I am dittoing what you just outlined. So I will pass to April.
I have some curiosities about goals and goal setting and how far that has got to. And I'm beginning to vote with my dots, but not very quickly. So want to know, want to get myself up to speed on that. I'm interested in charrette details, primarily so I can make plans if I'm going to be in person with you lot. And I don't know a thing about RFPs yet, so getting up to speed on that. And over to Vera.
Hi, I might have to hop off in a minute. I was curious about also the charrettes and if that's something I want to participate in person. Yeah, I didn't realize there was going to be a co-working portion. Pass it on to Ronnie.
Yeah, all of that sounds good to me. I also want to catch up with the RFPs and think through charrette logistics. Yeah, all sounds good. Back to Ben.
All right, cool. Well then, and actually the goal setting, we can cover goal setting and, I'm starting to use the note feature in Zoom. So I put together the what I thought I heard in terms of the agenda. So talking about the RFPs, guild recruitment, charrette planning, and the goals and the goal setting. And I think the goals and the goal setting are wrapped into the RFPs. So I'm going to propose that if we go over the RFPs as they stand now, I think that'll kind of create a good foundation for where we're at. And so I'm going to share the screen, and I'm also going to, right now we have them as Google Docs, and we're planning on using the website. So we'll add these to the website as well, and we can link them into the help desk. But right now they're Google Docs. I can find them. All right. Do you see heart work and philosophy? Okay, cool. And they're each separate Google Docs, so I'm gonna I'll put them in the chat so you can also click on the link. It's gonna say Guild 1, shorter typing. All right, so you should have the link, and I think it's shared so that if you have the link, it should be good. Let me just double check. Oh. All right, so now it should be good if you just use the link. I pre-populated from the responses that we've gotten so far to the survey, to the interest in the guilds. We have, and this isn't adding Roland and me and Ronnie, I don't know, because we haven't done it ourselves. We've got 5 people, plus probably a couple of us, who are interested in it. The goals really, so basically the primary function statement and then the bullet points under main responsibilities is mostly taken from how we laid out the guilds, right? How we talked about it. So the Guild 1, emotional heart, about relationality, some main responsibilities, and then these are the long-term goals that got translated from our process into this guild. And so a couple things about the goals. In a couple places, there were a whole bunch of little multiple post-its that are kind of rolled together into one. In some of those areas, it's clear that, like with the farm, the Guild 4, there were lots and lots of ideas for projects that we could be doing on the farm. And one of the things that the guild needs to do is figure out how much is reasonable, right? So, how much do we want to do? Like, how important is it to do a water experiment or a Pascal Prout experiment or there's multiple things in there and we probably can't do all of them. So anyhow, some of these I've rolled together a couple of the different post-its, and in most of them we've left the numbers as just X. And because I'm feeling like that's also where the guild work comes in, where the guild can start to say what numbers seem more reasonable. So so for Guild 1, the goals had to do with long-term goals were training people in ITFL, which anyhow, that could be a placeholder for, other indigenous ways of being. And then shared with the principals and governance group, the feedback that we get from guests and partners about how they experience the process. And then short-term, again, this is bundling a few together, creating get to know you and celebration opportunities on the farm, a certain amount, hosting potentially ITFL training, and hosting on-site retreats. And again, leaving those numbers sort of open for the guilds to talk about. And basically for the resources that go with it, most of the reasons, we'll see that we just seem to, well, I tried to portion them out based on like outreach was all of the social media stuff, and principles was all of the training type stuff. And so, with the difference, Guild 1 is quite light, and it's thinking of the studio as the event and education space, and then the rest of the farm is the farm. And you see a little the coordination there. So that's, and the way that this works as kind of an RFP is this is given to the guilds, and then the big job of the guilds is to sort out what the numbers are for the goals, refine them, do they need more clarity? Are they reasonable? Are they too big? Is anything missing? And then really it's coming up with the action items for like this year. What are the main things that the guild plans to get done? So that's I'm going to stop. I'll pause there to go through to see, are there questions or comments about either the general form of the RFP or artwork and philosophy? So over to Roland. Questions, comments, observations, etc.
My only comment is that at the very beginning, I realized that we sent out the form, the questionnaire, and I didn't fill it out. So I have a to-do task. And yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate here, but one of the things that I've been noticing, and we've talked about how things overlap, and it is the communication between guilds. Because yeah. So those are my comments and observations. So over to April.
I've got a couple of questions, I guess. Uh, First, under main responsibilities, where it says building internal relationships, does that mean building people's personal internal relationships, or does that mean relationships across all the guilds and across the different areas, sort of starting from the physical location and then out?
Not between the guilds. That would be the principles and governance, like how the guilds work together. This is more, it is interpersonal in terms of the emotional relationships among people who are on the farm, and internally to an individual. So it's also inner work. Yeah, it's inner work and relational work, but not organizational work. So how the guilds function in terms of handing off responsibilities, that's more of a process thing. So Guild 2, and how people feel about each other in that process is more Guild 1. And it's sort of creating additional opportunities for people to relate to each other in person-to-person ways, not necessarily through the work. That makes sense. And does that feel right to Roland and Ronnie? Okay. I'm getting a nod from Ronnie. And okay. Does that make sense, April?
That makes sense. I'm just wondering where the place is then for things like navigating tension sessions and all of those kinds
2.
of things.
Yeah, that's 2.
Two.
Guild 2. Yeah.
Guild 2, right. Okay. My other question is about the training in ITFL. Is there considerations of training in other things besides ITFL?
Sure.
I,
That's
I think so. I want to bring us back. I think this is what this is representing is what was given during the exercise of putting post-its on the different sections. So there's things that we could add. Is that something that we want to talk about now, or like where would it be?
right.
So this is just dealing with what the group came up with. And so this other stuff wasn't on the post-its. So how at this point, how would we talk about that?
That's a really good point. This is the guild's conversation. So, once we hand the RFP over to the guild, then that's one of the things that the guild can have a conversation around. What's the intention behind, and the intention behind it is there could be other training, but it would be it could be something like, I'm going to say it's not allyship training. That would be someplace else. It's not sociocracy training. That would be someplace else. But it is things that would have to do with, anything to do, like the grief work. So if it was something around, working with trauma, or working with grief, that would go in this guild. And the ITFL was put in there as like a concrete thing because of, I don't know another way of training people into indigenous ways of relating. If there were something else like that, then it would go in here, and it would be up to the guild to talk about, well, in the spirit of ITFL training, this other training seems to cover that better, or isn't more available, or whatever. That would be, but we really, at this point, we're kind of reviewing it as though we are the stewardship council. So how do things fit together, and how do things fit together, and do we have the core basis covered? And then we'll hand it off to the guilds, and then they can elaborate and run with it. Roland?
Okay.
I think I'm adding to that. One of the things that we were noticing and going through the post-its is that there were things that looked like they should be grouped together. And what I was wondering is, could it also be that instead of having specifically something specific like ITFL training, that there's something more general that then the guild would be able to add, sort of like, well, okay, so how would that, whatever it is, how would we do that in the next year? So sorry, I just wanted to add that back to April.
Okay, I'm still catching up on the goal setting. So I'm trying to figure out the relationship between goals and this, I guess. But that's okay. That all makes sense. So on to Vera, I think.
And Vera's left.
On to Ronnie.
This all sounds good to me. I don't have any questions or comments at this time. Back to Ben.
All righty. And then hopefully I can just click, and you see the shift.
Right.
Cool. I never know. Sometimes Zoom doesn't follow it when you click through something else. So next guild, principles and governance. Again, we've in the function laid out that it's the immune system and the permeable membrane. And I added regulatory system because I felt like that's kind of the conflict resolution, restorative practices aspect of things. And well, actually decision making. So main responsibilities are onboarding. And so I've basically lumped education for the most part in Guild 2. And in terms of so things having to do with decision making, sociocracy, and restorative practices and onboarding all get under the Guild 2 umbrella. There's obviously a lot of overlap because what people are going to be educated in is probably going to come from Guild 4 or through Guild 4, or actually, or Guild 1 or Guild 5. But so they're kind of conceptually, it's like they're responsible for the content, and Guild 2 is responsible for helping to shape the process and the form. So it's really it's the guild that makes sure planning meetings happen, navigating tensions meetings happen, that the badges are kept up to date, and they keep the record of the badges, but then each of the guilds will have like they will be responsible for their badges, but Guild 2 is responsible for checking that they actually have badges. You know, like that's the sort of the handoff there. And likewise, there's obviously a lot of shared responsibilities between the Heartwork Guild and the Process Guild, the Principles Guild. So like some of the main goals, that was like there were a couple things that we did. One is we clustered some goals together because they seemed like there were a bunch of individual things that kind of built to one general goal. And there were also some goals that really were kind of evenly in two or more guilds. So like one of our outcomes is we want positive feedback from the people who come visit the farm and take part in the onboarding and the experience. And of course, that's a shared responsibility. But we can start to think of, you can also see where those responsibilities go, right? But the big goals add up to, those individual things. So, and likewise, we're thinking that the outreach is responsible for letting people know about events. So like, for example, with the training, let's say there is, ITFL training. So the ITFL part of it is going to be Guild 1's responsibility. Making getting people to aware of it is the outreach Guild 5 responsibility. And then making sure that the records and everything of who's been trained and who isn't trained is Guild 2, and how that gets integrated into the practices on the farm. So and then I think short-term goals, we're looking at basically onboarding people and developing the repertoire of badges, and online and in-person webinars. And guess once around questions, comments, observations. Roland? Good. Okay. April?
Good.
Ronnie? All right. This will get faster and faster then. Finance and legal is really straightforward, and they don't have many goals, but they're very important. So and I think it's all very straightforward. And then we put the resources that are anything having to do with money and finances. So those resources then go into that group. There's just one thing I want there's 2 farmers with full equity this year. People added it as the this year goal, and I'm not sure, unless they think that there are going to be 2 people that come in flush with money. Maybe Cam and Tasha could be that, but I don't even think they're necessarily anyhow. I thought having anybody with full equity this year seems a little bit optimistic, but could happen. I don't know, lotteries and such. Anyhow, questions, comments, observations on this RFP? Roland? April?
I don't understand what full equity means.
Full equity is you own a full share, like a full footprint, 100 shares.
Okay, so there's 6 farmers with 100 shares each.
Yeah, each with 100 shares. Yeah. 100 shares is owning your footprint, and maybe that's a better, let's say like full footprint equity. So yeah, the whole, since everything's based on everyone having a fair share, it is legally owning your fair share. Or maybe we should have full fair share. And anything else?
Nope.
Ronnie? Farm food and housing. This one's a little bit trickier just because there's so much that gets placed here. It's also basically it's the Farmer Caretaker Guild. So in some sense, this is also the guild that's most likely to then get populated with subcircles, where we're going to go back to how we have been doing things, and goats and chickens, but a lot of the other stuff, we won't have the goats, chickens, gardens, workshop, all of that stuff will happen, but then all of the process and hospitality and things like that will probably be offloaded. Like, I'm thinking hospitality is really going to be kind of guild one. Although now that we say it, that's just an assumption I was making. I don't know that we've had that conversation. Anyhow, so the big thing for the farm guild is just how do we make it realistic? And so I clustered, there's still, lots of long-term goals, but there's the diet, the actual food produced, there's the housing, and housing divided both for farmer housing and then guest housing. Then there's the sort of all of the demonstration aspects of it. So there's not just growing the food, but then doing it in a way where we can say, look, a Euroculture bed. This is how, Roland is looking at self-seeding annuals. So like we could have a self-seeding annual bed for vegetables. So anyhow, the demonstration aspects of it, and carbon sequestration. And this could actually, the demonstration could be, because it's housing and agriculture, so that probably should get divided out. But I just threw it all together because it's already this super long list. And then carbon sequestration and biodiversity. So all of the tangible stuff goes in one guild, so that guild has a lot of work to do to be able to sort of sequence out, what's realistic for this year. And that's, so in terms of short-term goals, again, I took a whole bunch of individual ideas and said, we need a garden and farm plan, and we need an infrastructure plan. And then beyond that, it would be about the benchmarks that Barbara was talking about, like how do we start measuring and getting a baseline. And then there's in there also about hosting woofers and interns. And again, this is one of those, like, it's kind of a shared responsibility across guilds for the interns and the woofers and guests as well. And then they also, this guild also gets all the material assets of the farm minus the studio. And not a lot of electronic assets, just the site plan and the book of the farm. But it's also a guild too, where there's going to be huge overlap, huge interdependencies, like everything. Where does the money come from for the infrastructure? Where does the money go to from income? How does outreach work? How does process work? So obviously this is the one with probably the tightest interconnections. So anyhow, questions, comments, observations, Roland?
Yeah, I think I responded to one of your tags in Miro about the woofers, or caretaker, or not caretakers, but anyway, the people coming onto the farm. That there seems to be it's shared because there are stages. There's the finding them,
Right,
communicating with them, which is Guild 5, and then there's getting them here and getting them onboarded, which is Guild 1, I think, or 2.
Two.
And then there's the working with them, which is then Guild 4. So it's like you could take the one thing and actually find how it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over to April. That's the only thing I wanted to say. So over to April.
So this is the guild that has the most physical labor
Yes,
involved with it,
yeah.
right? So there needs to be a minimum number of bodies to be doing that. Is that what the numbers are in terms of woofers and interns?
What do you mean? Is that where the work group comes from?
Yeah,
We're hoping that we'll have 5 of us as farmer caretakers this year. There's generally, I don't want to overstate, but Barbara is interested in joining us, and Cam and Tasha are interested in joining us. And if we can, then that would make a core team of 5 of us. And then we've had, 1 or 2 interns or woofers at a time. And if we have 1 or 2 at a time, or that's part of the kind of the bigger, how big to set the sites.
yeah.
But if we had 5 of us plus a woofer and an intern, then that would be a pretty significant bump in our labor pool. It'd make a huge difference. And we've also, I'd say from experience, there is a qualitative energetic shift that happens at about 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
Two people is nice to be working on something, but when you have 4 people working on something, all of a sudden it really seems to turbocharge things. So anyhow, back to you, April.
Okay, that's it. On to Ronnie.
I think it sounds good to me. This looks really great and comprehensive and exciting. So I'm good. Back to Ben.
Cool. Yeah, and I really like Roland's, I think that having a couple of those, here's how you can trace the connections between, like, it's sort of, here's when you hand off.
Yeah.
I think that's all we really need to, and it's sort of like, and there's going to be, it's a Venn diagram. There's going to be where there's a handoff, then, you do that carefully. But I think there's a couple examples that can make everything pretty straightforward. So last Guild 5, Outreach and Network. And I added mycelia to, it's like tentacles or mycelia, to the description of it in terms of its kind of the organic as an organism, because it's a little bit reaching out, but it's also passing nutrients in and out. Yeah, so we kept it pretty straightforward. It's like, this is the guild that is relating to the things that are happening off campus. And so that can be working with people who are off campus to bring them into campus, like to attract them to come in. Or it could be people that are just at a distance and they're doing their thing, other lifeboats. So, one of the functions of the outreach network and network is to maintain the connections to other lifeboats, but then also to bring things into Spalding Valley Farm. And yeah, and things that have to do specifically with what I've seen described as community to community reconciliation between indigenous communities and settler communities, that would also go on in Guild 5. And that gets a little bit tricky is not the right word, but it's one of those overlapping areas because, for example, land back, and there's just a post-it that says land back, participate in land back, which is great, but like, what does that actually mean? And so this is Guild 5, but with overlap for Guild 4, right? How does that happen? And likewise, there would be overlap, a different kind of overlap in those areas with, if we have indigenous led workshops on the property, for example, then there's going to be, a connection with Guild 1 or Guild 2 and Guild 4 and Guild 5 in that area. So there's sort of, I guess that now that I'm talking it out loud, it's really, there are three different aspects to Guild 5. One is, for want of a better word, recruitment, marketing, getting people interested in what we're doing. So that's one aspect. One is just maintaining lines of communication to our partners who are off the farm. What are they up to? And, that sort of thing. And what are we up to? What are they up to? And then the other is that, reconciliation between settler and indigenous communities. And, but they kind of all fit in Guild 5. Yeah, and then in terms of resources, basically anything having to do with that kind of outreach. So, and it parses out kind of nicely. The finance and fundraising gets the CRM, and Guild 2 gets the help desk, and Guild 5 gets MailChimp and the social media accounts. It's sort of all of the different tools actually sort of have a logical home where they make the most sense. What's around? Questions, comments, observations? Roll on over to you. Ape.
No questions. On to Ronnie.
Works for me. Back to Ben.
All right. Well then, so we've got our RFPs. We've got they're set up so that the RFPs are basically in the form of driver statements. So the idea is that, we do the first half and the guilds flesh out the second half. And then that becomes our agreement, right? The driver statement becomes the agreement for the guild. So the question now is like, what are the next steps here? And yeah, what are the next steps that people are seeing? And that's it. And we can just maybe go around a couple times. We'll go around once to see what people have in mind, and then another time to see how we can weave that together. So circle rules apply. You can pass if you don't have anything to add. And actually, let's do one addition so we can do multiple rounds if we need to. So Roland, ideas around next steps? You can always pass. You have that deer caught in the headlights look.
I'm just thinking that we wanted to talk about invitations, and we haven't talked about invitations. So invitations. So and we've got 12 minutes left, or 12 minutes before 11:30.
Yeah.
So given that was one of the things that we really wanted to talk about, we have very little time left to talk about it. So over to
So the question is next steps about the guilds and the RFPs. I'd like a little more time to absorb what's in the RFPs for each guild. I think this is really on the right track, but I just have too much to process at the minute to be sure of that. So I want to have a second look and a review of it for myself. On to Ronnie.
Yeah, I'd also like to talk about invitations before we leave, because that's pretty pressing. And I also feel like some space until our next guild conversation might be good. Back to Ben.
Cool. Well, it makes me think of the part of the invitation can be sending out the drafts of the RFPs as they stand, to the people who have already expressed interest in the guild. That could be an easy sort of next part of the invitation. So in terms of invitations, yeah, then what? What do we need to talk about in terms of invitations? So I'm going to pass it over to Roland. If somebody else could take notes, I'm also going to do a quick bio break, and I'll be right back.
uh Okay, well, invitations, I think there was talk about making specific invitations to specific people. And so we'd need to agree that we want to do that and who are the people that we want to specifically contact over to April.
Are these specific people, are you thinking of specifically for people who will be on site or for anybody that there might be a category, whether you're going to zoom in or be there in person, that puts you into the category of being a specific person?
Well, that's something to discuss. For me, I don't care. I don't care if it's people here or people online. It's just
Okay.
people. So if I can jump in and respond, but I think that that's also a question that's open to everyone.
Okay, on to Ronnie, I think.
I'm wondering, what do people need to know? So 13 people filled out the form already. What do people need to know next about attending the charrette? AKA what communications need to go out next? Back to Ben.
And I'm just going to bring myself up to speed. Well, and one of the thoughts, I think I mentioned this already, is do we want to really focus the on-site part as, you know, kind of the potential farmer caretakers or, you know, kind of core group? And because that'll influence what needs to go out to whom, you know. So it feels a little bit like I mean, the people that are, there's only a few people that are planning on being here right now. And I'm not sure if that's going to change wildly. You know, I don't think that's going to change wildly. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I was actually talking with Roland this morning about it could actually be really convenient to have our online part mostly a kind of at a different that basically there's the work that happens online, and then in between that's actually where there's sort of cleanup time from the core team. Anyhow, that's just my thought. But I think the big thing is how many people are there on the invitation list that we haven't heard from yet? And for me, I think they're mostly not people that I was hoping would be here in person, but are more people that might join the guilds, you know, at a distance. So anyhow, I feel like I'm rambling now. So back over to you, Roland.
I don't have anything to add over to April.
Um, I'm wondering of responses that we've got back from people, how many are wanting to be on site, if any.
I can check. I got it up. It's kind of hard to read how they summary. Yes, in person 3. And
One of them is Nawar, who lives in Iraq,
I know.
and he's confused and he doesn't speak English.
Yes.
So
So we have
probably
2 that
count
are
him
a
out.
combination in person and remote, 7 that are just remote. So, but I mean, Barbara, and actually I'm not, what is Cam's response? That was the last one to come in. Remotely. Okay, so Cam is planning on coming in remotely. And Vera's the other person who said that they might be maybe a combination of in-person and remote. And I don't think Vera is not a candidate for me for a long-term relationship with the farm. So I wouldn't encourage it. But I mean, and I guess we could, we could talk about doing the whole thing remotely. Anyhow, blah, 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 blah. Roland.
Well, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't considered that we would do it all remotely. We could also think about it and like, how many beds do we have here? Well, I think that yeah, okay. I'm willing to explore the idea. I feel like even if it's a small group here, that it might be good in terms of the kind of energy that we're producing to actually have guests and having especially if it's going to be, and I am looking forward to that. Anyway, core team, because it also allows for opportunities to debrief and to prepare for the
Mhm.
next session if we're all just sort of hanging out together.
Mhm.
So maybe exploring the idea of it being primarily online or primarily remote, that the people who would be invited, we could do it so that the people who are invited to be here are people who are part of the quote unquote core team as much as is reasonable, because I think, Ronnie coming might be a bit challenging. But so that it's people that we want to build relationships with, and or people that we work with, like I'm hoping April will be able to be here, and I think Heather is planning on being here.
Mhm.
Potentially Barbara. That already seems like a good group. And we've got 6 spots, 3 beds.
Well, and Barbara said she stays in her car sometimes and she's happy to do that too. So if we need to, we've got a little bit more capacity. And the RV, actually, I think it's warm enough that we could run the heater and that would be probably fine. And
So that's what I'm going to add. So over to April.
Well, yes, I would like to come. And it's just me. Allison is not able to come. So, uh, so my main concern at this point is there a spot that I can have a bed, or I'll bring a sleeping bag and whatever, a spot where I can park myself with you guys. And that's
definitely.
out of self-interest, but it's time to make plans too. So that's great. And I do agree. I think that having the core team there physically together is good for the debriefing and the other stuff, and the simple rubbing of shoulders, which for me is a rare thing with you guys. But there's other stuff that comes out of that we wouldn't get otherwise. So I vote for kind of core team or closer in folks being together, the rest of it being online, remote, and then that does have some implications for facilitation and points of inclusion and the pacing of what we do. I don't think that's a big issue at all, because it's kind of laid out what's going to go on for the content, and So it's just working through what we already know. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, I think having a smaller group in person like that actually makes the hybrid event a lot easier. Um, because instead of having to coordinate this huge group of people and then bring in this online group, it's like, I mean, even with how the studio, if the studio is still set up how it was when I left, you have the big table, you have the TV, you can have everyone there sitting together on camera and then everyone else on Zoom. I think even that could work really well. So it seems really doable to me. I don't foresee it being super hard, but things
Mhm.
never go according to plan. So
Mhm.
just gotta keep all that in mind. But I think that honestly, and also it being the second charrette, and now there's a number of people who are more involved at the core level, I think it just makes sense as the format to have that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a lot easier hospitality wise and food wise as well. So
Mhm.
there's definitely a major consideration there for convenience. Um, yeah, so that's what I have about that. Over to Ben.
I agree. Um, yeah, my only sadness is that Cam can't be here. And I'm wondering if we maybe reach out and say, is there a way, and would it make a difference to Cam knowing that it's just going to be the core team? And um, so that would be, I think that's my only, it's not even hesitation. It's like a slight disappointment. I mean, I think we can make it work. Um, but it would be really cool if Kim and Tasha could be here. Um, yeah. So maybe if we can, I know they're coming from the interior, so that makes it a much bigger deal. I'm not even sure where are they in. Are they outside of Kamloops? Oliver? No, I can't remember where they are. Anyhow, just trying to figure out like if they're on the eastern side of the province, that's like a full day travel to get here, a complicated full day. Um, so yeah, especially arranging ferries and things like that. Anyhow, it would be my dream if we could just teleport them here. That would be really awesome. Um, so I think it sounds kind of like it seems almost like we've made a decision here that we are going to focus on the core team being on site and others, to the extent possible, we'll try to get the core team on site, and then we can do a hybrid for everybody else. And the then that leaves the open question for me of who do we consider the core team? Obviously us and Barbara, and then Cam and Cam and Tasha. Is there anybody else that we would put in that core team group that we'd really want to have here?
I'm not sure. There's uh
Oh, right.
there's Heather, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I would put Becca on the core team too, and that, obviously.
yeah. I guess in terms of people who have worked with us most closely, I think that's the list.
Maybe Stephanie
I
as a,
was
you
I was
know,
kind of having the feeling it'd be really cool if Steph were there.
Yeah.
I
Um,
did just send her a message yesterday and I was asking if I asked if she was planning on attending because she did say that she wanted to be more involved.
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's no way Becca's going to come, but like, I am wondering if there's also a way of uh additional Zoom sessions or something for the core
Yes.
folk who
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
that maybe that's how we augment it. All right. Well, yeah, so I'm feeling like this seems like we have a decision, and I just want to go around to make sure that that's actually right. So any final thoughts on this, Roland?
No, April?
Nope, I'd like to get our heads together to figure out how to do the hybrid part as soon as possible. So we can forestall some of those usual things that come up that Ronnie was talking about. But other than that, this feels like a really good way to manage the situation. Over to Ronnie.
Agreed. Over to Ben.
Cool. All right. Well, this feels like an added bonus that we've figured this out. This is kind of a little bit of a nagging question for me, and I actually think that it's not really going to be hybrid. Like, I think the easiest way of doing it is, Roland and I, when Ronnie was here, we all did separate computers when there were other people, because it just was easier actually to treat it online. So it's the hybrid nature is basically we have everything online, and then we have supplemental meetings that are just in person. And we're doing everything on the Miro board anyhow. So, and if really we just want to make sure that the core team are set up with a means of accessing, um, the Miro board and Wi-Fi and stuff. Yeah, cool. I mean, still, let's next session probably. I think we can talk through that. Yeah, I feel like we're good to go. Does anybody who should reach out to Cam and Tasha to see if maybe they could make it? I can. I'll just send a message. And yeah, actually that's good. And Roland, you'll kind of put the bug in Steph's ear.
Yeah,
Cool. Awesome.
continue.
And I'm available if people need to be picked up at ferries and stuff like that,
Cool.
because I'm coming on as many ferries as I can. So if there's other people that have partial transportation or whatever and want to get a ride, I can do that. It could
Cool.
be the April bus.
Awesome. All right. Well, off we go.
So tomorrow there's a navigation session, so there's not co-working, is that right?
Right.
Okay. I will not be at co-working on Thursday, but I will be available Friday. So I
Alrighty.
can catch up via recording/notes and then see you on Friday. And I'll see Ben and whoever else tomorrow for the navigation session.
And we're not posting this recording, right?
Well, we want to post the update.
Yes.
And I think we should post this. We go
Nope.
through the RFPs. So
As long as you're okay, because you were saying that you were making comments about Vera not being a candidate. And
Good catch.
unless someone knows, I don't know, I can edit the beginning and the end of a video. I don't know how to edit the middle. So I wouldn't be able to do that. If we could edit out that part, then it would be great to be able to post this, but otherwise I don't think we should post it.
Good point. Well, I'm not the one who can edit.
Does anyone know how to edit in the?
I know how to. I don't currently have a program for it. So I need to find a free program because that's the only, but it would be good for me to have anyway, because I know how to edit, so I might as well do it.
Well, and I do wonder if we can, because that was when we started talking about invitations, we could post, if you say you can edit the end, you could just take it up to RFPs and post
That's
it
true.
around RFPs.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually more valuable anyhow. I think that's really the describing the RFPs. So let's do that if you can chop off the end, and then post it.
Did you want to do that, Ronnie? Because if it's just chopping off the end, then I can do it as well.
If you could do it, that'd be great because I still haven't. I need to put that on my long list of to-dos to find a program that's free.
Yeah.
So
I think, I think I can do it. If I can't, then I'll reach out. Is that okay?
yeah.
Okay.
All right. I believe we are adjourned. So until we see each other later, which April in your case is going to
Yep.
be in a couple hours. All right.
Take
So,
care. See you
Okay.
soon.
Ben, what time are we meeting?
you have it for 2:15. Oh, wait, no, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm thinking, wait a minute, today? That's tomorrow,
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought it was today. I'm a day in advance.
That's okay. So we're still on for 2:15 Wednesday.
Yep, there we go.
Thanks. Okay.
I know what
Bye.
day of the week it is. I totally know. I know who's president and everything.
Last week I knew every day of the week. This week is a little iffier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All righty. I'll see you tomorrow then.